There were two terrorist attacks on American soil over New Year's. One, a man named Shamsud-DinJabbar drove a pickup truck through a crowd on Bourbon Street, New Orleans, killing 15 people and injuring another 30. He was then killed in a gunfight with the police just a little while later. The second attack was on the steps of the Trump Hotel in Las Vegas, where a former military special forces comms officer exploded a cyber truck full of gasoline and fireworks and died himself in the explosion and injured a further 8 people. Now, these two events, the military and police investigators are trying to connect because the two men had some potential relationships with one another. Both served at Fort Bragg. Both were deployed in Afghanistan around the same time. And they were both ostensibly in sort of the tech comms world. Shamsud-Din-Jabbar, who was, I believe, an 8-year veteran of the military, was in sort of IT and tech services. That's sort of related to comms. It's conceivable that these two men did know each other, but there are some really key differences in the attacks that they. One thing that the media has focused on is Shamsud-Din-Jabbar had an ISIS flag with him, which sort of indicates that he might be connected to the Islamic State, which was a terrorist organization, fundamentalist Islam, and he is a Muslim. But other than that, his profile doesn't really point much to ISIS. He is more of a typical school shooter, mass shooter in his profile. He was just divorced. 2 of his real estate businesses had failed. He'd been fired from an IT job. He's more of like a despondent edgelord versus someone who was radicalized by Islamic things. So I believe... this is a guess here, that Islamic State flag is more of a red herring trying to inspire terror more than an ideological connection with ISIS. More likely, because he had been deployed to Afghanistan, he was aware of ISIS, he was aware that the fear associated with that flag, what that inspires, I believe that is probably what is going on there. Now, Matthew Livelsberger, who was actually in Colorado Springs, I'm in Denver, so he was sort of like nearby, rented his truck on Turo, drove it to Las Vegas and exploded. And the thing that's very weird about that incident, it was highly symbolic. Obviously, the Tesla truck and in front of the Trump Hotel, that indicates, he's making a statement against the incoming presidential administration. But the thing that I cannot figure out is how a 15-year veteran in the special forces died while setting off a bomb in a horrible way. I mean, the explosion wasn't enormous. It was gasoline and fireworks driven. It doesn't look like there was dynamite or anything like that. And he died in the blast, which is a pretty horrible way to go. And I would just think that a special forces operator who also had a degree in strategic studies and defense analysis, according to his LinkedIn profile, I'm surprised that he wasn't able to carry out, and this is very grim, but a more effective attack than what Shamsud-Din-Jabbar was able to do. So something is very weird about the cyber truck attack. It seems extremely symbolic, and maybe he just wanted to die in that event and not take out very many people, whereas Shamsud-Jabbar was really looking for a high body count. Now, I did a video with Ragi Girgis just a few weeks ago looking at the mentality of mass shooters. And in general, and this is something to remember, mass shooters generally engage in their work, if you can call it their work, not because they just want to make a political statement as much as their goal is to die in the attack. Their goal is to die in an exchange of fire with police. That's what they want. They also want notoriety afterwards. The media is playing right into this thing. There are major investigations and news stories on NPR, on the TV, and on all of the newspapers constantly asking questions about who these people are and giving them the notoriety they want. And I don't think that's necessarily a great idea. Of course, then again, I'm doing this too, and you're watching this video, so obviously we are curious about the motivations. I believe the motivations, at least with Shamsud-Din-Jabbar, was to die by suicide. He was obviously despondent. Matthew Livelsberger, it seems a little bit more politically motivated, very, very targeted. And that is That seems different. It just seems a little different to me. We in the United States are going through a new resurgence of political violence. Over the summer during the presidential campaign, President Trump survived 2 assassination attempts, one with a bullet scratching his ear, a second one with a man hiding in the bushes outside of Mar-a-Lago. No shots were fired in that case. And then, of course, we also have Luigi Mangione, who assassinated the CEO of United Healthcare. I sincerely hope that this is not the direction that America goes with indiscriminate violence. And I think it's worth pausing for a moment and thinking about the 2 different types of violence that all do exist right now. One, we have targeted assassinations that are trying to get a direct political outcome, whether it's assassination of United Healthcare CEO or killing a president. That's directly trying to attack the system with specific targets and, I assume, specific political outcomes. And then there is indiscriminate terrorism, where people are dying in mass, and the goal is just to make people scared. And I'm not totally sure where the Cybertruck falls into that, but the event that happened in New Orleans is very clearly modeled on what also happened in Germany just a few weeks ago, where someone drove a truck through a holiday market just trying to kill as many people. The ISIS flag, that's terror. That's just trying to tear the society apart at its very roots, just make people scared to exist in public spaces. But there's this other type of more specific attacks that could be the harbinger for what we're going to see, and I worry about this in the Trump administration, right? Right now, a lot of people don't feel like they have much say in the political process, on the left, on the right, just all around. There's a feeling that the courts don't function the way they once were, at least they're not fair. And that is one of the primary reasons why violent events, revolutions occurs, that ordinary citizens don't feel that they have any role in the political process, and then they reach out with violence, either indiscriminate terrorism, which is in many ways the worst outcome, because indiscriminate terrorism is just rage, right? These target attacks, though, it already seems that they're getting more frequent. It already seems that people are doing that. And I do not know how this is going to play out over the next 4 years, except to say that it seems likely it will increase. I think America needs to take this sentiment into account. I think the Trump administration needs to take this sentiment into account, because we do not want violent revolution in the United States. Anyway, I'd love to know what you think. This was my back channel. Thanks so much for listening.